Hi all, Brad Wright from the Single Malt Whisky Club here, and this month we're visiting Campbelltown and the youngest of the three Campbelltown distilleries, Glengyle, and we say g'day to their flagship whisky, the Kilkerran 12-year-old. Now, I say youngest, but it's not really. In fact, Glengyle Distillery refers to itself as Scotland's newest old distillery, and here is why. The distillery itself was founded in 1872 by William Mitchell. After a few changes of hands over the next 50 odd years, the Glengyle distillery fell silent in 25 and remained so for the next 75 years. Around the year 2000, the Scotch Whisky Association was in discussions about declassifying Campbelltown's status as an official whisky region. The primary reason for this was that only two working distilleries remained in the region. From its dizzying heights as a region sporting around 30 legal distilleries and at least 50 illicit stills supplying the bulk of the Scottish whisky, the Campbelltown region was in tatters. If you'd like to know more about the rise and fall of the Campbelltown whisky region, have a look at our Springbank and Hazelburn write-ups and videos from earlier this year. Luckily, a proud Campbelltonian, Hedley Wright, who happened to not only be a descendant of William Mitchell, but was also chairman of J&A Mitchell & Co., who owned another Campbelltown distillery you may have heard of, Springbank. The thought of his beloved Campbelltown losing its whisky region status prompted Hedley to do something about it, and do something about it he did. J&A Mitchell purchased the old Glengyle distillery in 2000 and began restoration and refurbishment. In 2004, production commenced once more in the Glengyle distillery for the first time in 3/4 of a century. And now that the number of working distilleries in Campbelltown was equal to the number in the Lowland region, Campbelltown held on to its status as an official Scottish whisky region. Story doesn't end there though. You might wonder why Glengyle Distillery brands its whisky as Kilkerran. Well, there's a few good reasons for this. Firstly, when the Mitchell family bought the Glengyle distillery in 2000, for some reason they didn't purchase the naming rights. Now, I'm not sure if this was an absent-minded omission by the solicitors drawing up the contracts, or it was purposefully done. It could go either way, because secondly, when the Mitchells took possession of the Glengyle distillery in 2000, sadly the name Glengyle was already in use by a blended whisky company, and so to avoid any confusion between the Glengyle distillery nectar and the Glengyle blended blah, the Mitchells decided to use the name Kilkerran, and I'm not even going to try to attempt to pronounce the original Gaelic, which is derived from the name of the settlement where St. Kieran is believed to have set up a religious cell, and where Campbelltown stands today. Whew. Okay, so after all that, let's have a taste of the Kilkerran 12-year-old. This is a peated whisky, but it's a very light and mild peating. It's certainly no smoke monster, and what hints of peat are there work to complement rather than compete with the other flavours and smells. So there's the colour. There's a sort of a darkish straw colour. Rather nice. There it is again in a glass. That sort of mid to dark straw. The nose, fruit and nuts, some sweet cupcake frosting enveloped in an oaky embrace with just a light reminder of peat there. It's very subtle. Palate. Oh wow, it's light, it's fruity. There's raisins, sultanas, good dollop of vanilla, zesty citrus peel, and a rounded malty flavour. What peat there is it's very subdued. The finish, it's very light, yet it's loitering, and it's got lots of citrus freshness. It's a sprinkling of pepper. And also that Campbelltown seaside is well represented with a salty turn and then just a suggestion of a campfire over yonder. So only a very small amount of peat there. If you're worried about being overwhelmed with phenols, burnt rubber and band-aids, have no fear. This isn't that sort of peat. It's a much more subtle peat, delicately frames the other delights that this whiskey has to offer. So, yum. Okay, on to the optional extra for this month. And this month, it's something a little out of left field. It's not a single malt, it's a blended malt. So in January this year, wow, remember January? That seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? I got a phone call from Ian Schmidt, distiller of Iniquity single malt whiskey fame and long-time club member. And he told me in no uncertain terms that he'd just tried a blended malt that had blown his mind, and I was doing myself a serious disservice if I didn't try it too. He was speaking about this whiskey, the Founders Reserve 10-year-old from Spencer&Collings. Now, Mike Collings knows a thing or two about creating and marketing whiskey brands and blending whiskey. He's the man responsible for a little brand of whiskey you may know called Johnnie Walker Blue. Yep, Mike Collings, amongst his other whiskey-related accomplishments, is the man behind JW Blue. Unlike JW Blue, however, the Spencer&Collings isn't just a blended whiskey containing that nasty industrial grain alcohol. It's a blended malt, a big distinction. As the name suggests, a blended malt is simply a blend of single malt whiskies with none of that grain alcohol added. And in the cause of full transparency, Spencer&Collings even lists the origins, if not the actual distilleries, of the whiskey it's made from right there on the label. Founders Reserve is comprised of 49 gallons of first fill Madeira Barrique aged Speyside malt, 50 gallons of second fill ex-bourbon aged Northern Highland whiskey, and then 105 gallons of Speyside and Islay malts, both aged in refill Oloroso sherry butts. As a 10-year-old age statement, the youngest of all these whiskies is 10 years old. And the result is this lovely looking, rich, dark copper beauty. Just look at that. If that's not a truly delightful eyeful, then I don't know what is. But how does it taste? The colour, once again, lusciously dark and coppery. Oh, wow. The nose, delicious. Wow, there's like a choc caramel tart, raspberry coulis, and wafts of vanilla, and it's all wrapped up in a snug oaky embrace. The palate, oh wow. A warm, spicy explosion initially, quickly coats the whole mouth, and then fades fairly quickly to a spice fruit mince with citrusy notes, and then there's a suggestion of leather goods. There is leather there, definitely. I can see why this struck a chord with Ian Schmidt. His whiskey has a similar note. And then there is more of that lovely oakiness. The finish, oh yum. It's lovely and warming. Some more citrus and fruit, but now with that seaside salty influence. Yum. Okay, and finally, don't forget, all members who purchase one of the Founders Reserve 10-year-olds this month will go into the running to win a bottle of the Spencer&Collings Imperial Tribute. Truly the flagship of the Spencer&Collings label, and available only as a fully personalised presentation box of superb whiskey. All the details of how to win are in the November newsletter. So that's it for me for this month. Our malt of the month is the Kilkerran 12-year-old, and our limited edition optional extra, the Spencer&Collings Founders Reserve 10-year-old. Both fantastic whiskies. Do yourself a favour, get a bottle of both, I would say. Don't be put off by the Kilkerran being a peated Campbelltown whiskey. There's very small amount of peat in there. It's really, really more complements those fruity notes than overrides it. I don't think if you don't like peat, I think you can still find a place for this whiskey in your collection. Seriously. Anyway, Brad Wright, Single Malt Whiskey Club. Until next month, Slanjavar.